guys, we're moving along on the build here. Now, what I wanted to talk to you about on this particular segment are the windows. Now, I already have the front windshield and the rear windshield installed. And I just wanted to talk about the installation process of this glass. Now, originally the front windshield and the rear are connected by the two plastic bars that make the two windshields one piece, actually, not two separate pieces. Now the problem is, if you try and install the body with those two plastic bars inside it, they're gonna run into the roll cage and not allow the body to sit down completely flush on the chassis. So you're gonna have to eliminate them and get them out of the center section of the roof. But one thing you cannot do once you separate the front and rear windshield is drop them, because I did drop the rear glass segment and you can see what happened there. You can also see how clear the glass is. It's pretty good. A little bit of distortion in it, but actually it's pretty good glass.
Stay on target.
So I cracked it, and then I'm saying to myself, oh my god, what am I going to do? How am I going to finish the buddy build? And then I remembered the Mr.mo build and how that car is now a convertible. So I didn't use the rear glass from that car. So in another little indicator that this particular kit started off as the original 1970 Pontiac GTO kit, I took the rear windshield, polished it out because it was quite scuffed up. It's 100% better now than it was. Is it perfect? No, but it's 100% better. And I took the windshield and I fit it to this chassis, and lo and behold, it fit 100% perfectly into this body. So I was able to save myself and from having a rear glass dilemma by using the Mr.mo GTO rear glass.
You smart. You very smart. You a genius.
So Mr.mo and Buddy are working together to get this project to come out perfect. The front glass installs very nicely. Now, what I did notice is that the lower edge of the front glass is going to run into the dashboard. So what I recommend is you shave it down just a bit. I shaved mine down a bit, and I'm hoping that it's enough to clear the dashboard. I think it is, but the only way to find out is to fit it and see if the body goes on where I want it to, so it'll have the proper stance. So I shaved that down. You can see here how I cut the two runners that connect the glass. So I hope I cut enough on the front that it won't interfere with the leading edge of the roll cage here. Because if not, then I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do, because I've already glued it in. So now let me talk to you about what I use for gluing clear parts. My two go-to clear part glues are this Tester's Clear Part Cement, which is, you know, a dream for gluing in clear parts. And you can clean it up with water. It kind of works just like white glue. It dries 100% clear, as you can see here. And has a really strong bond when it's completely dry. Now, it does take a while to dry. This it cures relatively slowly. So you got to make sure you have your glass in position, find a way to keep it in position while it's curing. Now, what I use to hold it in position is my Bob Smith Super Gold Plus. It's a CA glue, but it dries 100% clear. Now, this is a little bit harder to clean off the glass if you do get it on it. So what I do is I tack the glass down with the Super Gold Plus, put a little accelerator on it so that it locks the glass into place, and then I go around all the edges of the glass with the Tester's Clear Part Cement. And these two working together have never failed me on installing glass in the models. And as you can see, I mean, this glass is very clear. As you know, it does have a little bit of distortion. It's not perfect, but it is really very clear, and the rear glass just came out perfectly. So now we're going to try and fit this to the chassis and see how it comes out.
A few minutes later.
Alright guys, as you can see, this is not going to be easy to put together. So we're going to have to glue the dashboard back in. And try again. Okay, we knocked the motor loose. Okay, we're going to put it all back together and try this again. Okay, we're going to try a slightly different strategy now. Going to see if we can install the exhaust tip after we install the chassis into the car. I'm going to start by putting in one side and then dropping in the other. Now, the issue we have is the exhaust is actually fighting you as you're going into the car, as you really don't have enough room to install the body with the exhaust in the way. Unless you thought ahead and opened this up a little bit more, that'd give you enough room and enough clearance. I didn't think that far ahead. So now what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can't take another route. And we can run the exhaust in this way and get it to somehow join up at the end. There it is. Okay, so what we're gonna do is put that in there like that and leave it there. I was gonna pull it out to glue it in, but it's wedged in so tight there against the engine that voila, we're in. And that's where we're gonna stay. Not pulling that out again. So as you can see, we have the entire chassis in the car. Now we just have to see about centering it and getting it to sit the way we want it to. Because what we have here is an issue with the chassis being slightly askew, which would go along with a lot of what I've seen about this kit, that one side the tires stick out more than the other. And that looks to be as because of the design of this kit. And what we're gonna have to do is put the tires on it now, and we'll see how it sits. Because the body is together, and we're gonna see how our wheelbase is going to hold up here. As the chassis is kind of free floating within the body. There's no real glue points that I can see here that is going to help us to line things up. But since I'm a stickler for these kind of details, I'm going to try and see what I can figure out to possibly straighten this out. And part of the problem is the exhaust. But since that's such a cool feature of the car, we definitely don't want to lose that. But this opening here is definitely a little too small for the pipes to go through. If you build this, you're going to have to enlarge this opening to give you more room to maneuver things around. The dashboard seems to be pretty centered here. So let's just see what we get. We can get tires to stay on the car. After all, if we all know with the models, we want them to look good when they're sitting on a shelf. And sometimes getting caught up in all the minutia of the details, like I tend to do a lot, not really what you want to do. Now that wheel is centered pretty well on the chassis there. And I just knocked the exhaust off. Let's see if we can put that back on. We don't want to really permanently attach anything just yet until we can figure out where our wheels are going to sit. Okay, that's the exhaust reattached again. Now that wheel there sits pretty good, because the stance of the model, to me anyway, is really very important. Because when you look at it, 90% of the time it's just going to be sitting there on your shelf. And you really want to have something that looks cool while it's just sitting there. Okay, all right, I knocked that off. Let's not even worry about the exhaust right now, because we want to figure out what's going on with our wheels and tires. And this is one of the reasons I rarely mount the wheels and tires before I'm finished building the kit. Now this one has this weird attachment thing here where it's just these little nubs that the wheels attach to. Yeah, you're gonna have a few issues keeping this thing solid as you're putting it together. As you can only go so far forward with the chassis before the dashboard runs into the windshield, before it starts pushing the chassis down. And that's what we don't want. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have a slight issue, but we want a lowered stance because that would just look cooler. Maybe displaying it with the body separate from the chassis is a good idea. Nope, we're not giving up. We're gonna figure this out here. Now, the first problem is going to be this hood clearance, which, in order to get the hood to sit right, now our issue is our air cleaner, which sits up just a bit too high. Which we can possibly modify by removing the air cleaner in the carburetor. And maybe shaving down that mount for the carburetor, if I can get it off without breaking anything. That looks like that might be our game plan. Because here we have everything sitting right where we want it. Our wheels look like they're going to be centered. Okay, here the wheels centered. And the dashboard and the windshield are directly aligned with each other. So it looks like it may have an... And here we have... Okay, that is good there. That is good there. Which means that the front end is going to be pointing a little bit higher than I would like. But I think that's going to be the only way to make this fit. And when you think about it, it is the proper stance for a car of this type. And still won't look horrible. Actually, that doesn't look too bad at all. Now we just have to figure out how to anchor the chassis into the position that we want. But first, before we do that, we have to figure out if we can even put the exhaust in the car in this manner. Which we cannot do with the tire there. Here we go. There it is. The exhaust is wedged in place, which is hopefully going to hold the chassis in place as we try and figure out how we're going to anchor the chassis. Because there's no solid mounting point whatsoever. No mounting points at all for the chassis. Okay, I think this is going to be where we're going to be able to stay. Right there. I am happy with that. The hood is mostly in place. But it is a race car after all. You know, our dirt track racer. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit rough around the edges. There's that tire, and that's how far that one sticks out. We're pretty centered. So I think I do believe that this is going to work for what we want. I like the position of the tires there. I'm very happy with that. Or at least as happy as I'm going to get. Let's take a look at this one here, if we can get it mounted there. Okay, we got one side looking okay. I think that we're going to be good there. Now I still don't know how I can anchor this chassis where I want it to stay. And let's take a look at this. Yeah, we're going to have... I think we're going to be okay as far as where the tires are sitting. As far as them sticking out too far. The chassis isn't straight, but I think with a little nudging here and there, we can get the tires to sit right where we want them. But there is no attachment point for the chassis to the body. So it's going to just be a press fit body here. And as I was saying before, if you guys can see inside there, the roll cage butts right up against the roof. So if you had left the windshield connecting points, the two struts that connected the windshield front to rear, then you would not have been able to get this car to sit anywhere near as good as it does. So let's see, if we nudge it this way. Oh, sometimes you really gotta think about how good to me products are compared to something like this. Okay, there and there. I gotta figure this is as good as it's gonna get. Because if we go this way, we're too far back. Well, this way, we're perfectly centered. And the hood is relatively in place. Now, the only thing we have to figure out is how to keep the car here. How to keep the chassis here. That's what we have to figure out. As there really is no place to connect it anywhere. If I can get the chassis to stay here, I would be very happy. But there really is no place to connect it anywhere in this kit. Unless we glue it to the rails here. As you can see here, the rails from the roll cage here are the only place where the body actually comes into contact with the chassis. But before I even think about doing that, I want to glue the wheels on, because we want the wheels to be on permanently, so we're pretty close to the stance we want and pretty close to having the car be right where we want it. Yes, but the exhaust is going to be a problem. We're going to have to get that to stay on before we attach. Now, the other kit of this type that I built was the Revell C7R race car, which is a dream to take apart and put back together so you can show the chassis off. That was a dream. That car came apart so easily, so I can always display it with the chassis off. This one, you're not going to have that kind of luck, because you're definitely not going to be displaying it separate from the body. Ever, ever, ever. So what I'm going to do is let's apply a little super glue here, and very carefully guide it into the body, and we're going to glue the exhaust, and hopefully this time it'll stay. I like doing it with super glue because super glue is somewhat brittle when it dries. So if the worst comes to worst, it'll just snap off and you can try again. Okay, so there we go. That's attached. We're going to give that a second to dry. Then we're going to start gluing the wheels on. And then we're going to see what we can do about permanently attaching this chassis to the body. That's pretty even there. Pretty even there.
Pretty good.
Okay, that's actually pretty straight. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna apply a little super glue just on the rails of the roll cage to hold it steady here, just to give it a little bit of an anchoring point. Hopefully we can do this without mucking up. I'm not even sure if they're making full contact, but we can just put a drop here, 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 and here to create a bond on the body. And first, let's make sure we have it totally straight. Right there looks about as straight as it is going to get. There we go. The wheels look like they're more or less equal. It's not going to be 100% perfect, but then again, what model really is? Okay, now we're going to do the same on this side. So we're going to create one anchor point here. One here. And here the body is there we go. So hopefully that won't be too visible. No, not visible at all. Okay. So now that we have those little anchor points there, let's go about figuring out the rest of it. Our wheels are pretty much centered. Our ride height is more or less what it's gonna be. Okay, let's do a little bit of this to speed things up a little bit. So that we can see what we can do about the rest of this build as we're almost done. Now, these are very light. I mean, this is a very, I don't want to say really substantial attachment points here on these tiny little bits of the roll cage. But it is enough to keep the chassis from moving around, because now it seems to be much more solid. So now we're going to attach our front tires, and hopefully we get the stance that we want. I do believe the front end is going to be a little bit higher, but was somewhat normal for these cars to be a little higher in the front than in the rear. But I think that it's going to work out pretty nicely. It's almost a shame to put it together because you're covering over all this beautiful detail that they put into this kit. And it really is beautifully detailed. I know, MPC, beautiful details. Not exactly two terms that go together. Okay, so let's get you attached. With the lettering on the tires, I don't like to have them all facing the same way, because in a real car they never will, as the tires are moving at different rates and they're never going to sit all in the same place. So I always love to leave them in a much more natural appearance, which is with the tires, the lettering all in different places. I don't know, that's just a thing. I mean, yeah, cool. It looks cool when they're all together, but it's just something about that not really looking realistic enough to me. That's just my own hang up. Now let's put the last tire on. I don't know how I feel about this tire mounting bit that they have on this car, on this particular kit. There we go, it just popped in. As there are square contacts on here that the wheels and tires just pop into. Okay, let's put her down on all fours and see what we get. Oh, not too shabby. Not too shabby. Yeah, the hood has still got a little bit of something going on there. But overall, not too shabby. All right, guys, and here we have the Pontiac Superstocker. I think we got a pretty decent result. For a kit that was a lot of fun. It was a little tough to finally get the final assembly done, but as you can see, she sits more or less even all around. And the stance is pretty much what I was hoping for. Now these wheels are positionable, then you can't not really steerable, but you can kind of give them a little tweak here and there. I don't really think that that was a good idea. And maybe I'll just glue them in place, but now I'm going to be working on this gap in the hood. Now that's definitely being caused by the carburetor. Now a lot of people have said that they have an issue with the wheels that stick out too much on one side, and that's because the chassis doesn't sit exactly straight in the car. So you are going to have some of that. I did manage to straighten it out quite a bit, but I still have a little bit of the wheel too far out on one side. Not much you can do about that. If you want to put a spacer on it, you can push the other wheel out a little bit. It's not really that horribly noticeable. But I am happy with what I'm seeing here right now. Although I'm sort of thinking that maybe I should have just glued the wheels in. I left them so that they roll, but I should have just glued them in. I should have just glued everything solid. All right, guys. That's going to be it. This is, well, I still have to attach the rear bumper, but this is just the tiny little things that are left to do. So we're going to finish that up, and then we're going to jump on the Fiero on this third part of this build, and then we'll have a final reveal of all three cars once the Fiero's done. All right, that's it for this quick little... I'm not going to put the bumper on, so you guys will have to wait to see the entire thing completed. Or catch it at NNL East. All right, guys, that's it. I'll see you on the next one.